Julius Malema, the leader of South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, has once again sparked heated political debate with his unequivocal stance against collaborating with the Democratic Alliance, DA, and the Freedom Front Plus, FF Plus. Malema's comments came during the party's Land Reclamation Day event in Johannesburg, where he reaffirmed his party's refusal to work with these two parties, whom he described as enemies of progress. This bold proclamation adds to the ongoing tension in South Africa's political landscape, particularly in light of the nation's approaching elections and the increasing difficulty for the African National Congress, ANC, to secure an outright majority. Malema's remarks echo his party's long-standing position that the DA and FF Plus represent a counter-revolutionary, white supremacist agenda. His speech was not just an expression of disdain for these two political entities but a direct challenge to the political status quo, where coalitions are becoming an inevitable necessity due to the fragmented nature of South Africa's political environment. To understand the significance of these statements, it's important to look back at the historical context that shaped Malema's stance and the political dynamics of the country that are currently at play. South Africa's post-apartheid political landscape has been defined by a delicate balance of power, but recent years have seen this balance begin to shift in ways that could fundamentally change the nature of governance in the country. The ANC, once the unchallenged dominant force in South African politics, has struggled in recent years to maintain the level of control it once enjoyed. Scandals, internal divisions, and mounting dissatisfaction with the government's handling of key issues such as unemployment, poverty, and corruption have eroded the party's once strong support base. As a result, coalitions have become an increasingly viable option for the party in order to retain some degree of control over the political landscape. However, Julius Malema and the EFF have consistently opposed any coalition involving the DA and FF Plus, which they view as representing interests that run contrary to the ideals of the EFF. The DA, as the main opposition party, is often criticized by Malema and the EFF for its predominantly white leadership and policies that they argue cater more to the interests of the privileged elite than to the needs of ordinary South Africans, particularly black South Africans who are still grappling with the aftereffects of apartheid. The FF Plus, meanwhile, has long been associated with the interests of Afrikaans-speaking South Africans, and its stance on issues such as land reform, affirmative action, and the legacy of apartheid has placed it in direct opposition to the EFF's vision of radical economic transformation. Malema has frequently accused both the DA and FF Plus of being part of the entrenched power structures that maintain economic inequality and racial divisions in South Africa. Malema's refusal to work with the DA and FF Plus in a government of national unity, GNU, is a direct challenge to the possibility of forging a broad-based coalition to address South Africa's mounting issues. The concept of a GNU was floated as a potential solution after the 2019 elections, especially given the ANC's failure to secure a decisive majority. In the face of this, parties like the DA, Action SA, and the IFP have all voiced support for some form of coalition government. Yet, for Malema and the EFF, the exclusion of the DA and FF Plus from any such arrangement is non-negotiable. At the heart of Malema's political philosophy is the idea of economic freedom. For him, this means dismantling the entrenched power structures that continue to benefit a small elite at the expense of the broader population. Land expropriation without compensation, nationalization of key industries, and radical transformation of the economy are central tenets of the EFF's platform. These ideas, however, are often at odds with the policies advocated by the DA and FF Plus, who argue for more gradual economic reforms that they believe will not destabilize the country's economy or scare off investment. This divide has become even more apparent in recent events, such as the EFF's opposition to the fiscal framework in the national budget. While the ANC, along with smaller parties like the Good Party and the IFP, voted in favor of the budget, the EFF was one of the key dissenting voices. Malema and his allies in the party have made it clear that they view the passing of this budget as indicative of the failure of the current government to meet the needs of ordinary South Africans. They have also announced plans to challenge the budget's passing in court, arguing that the process was flawed and that Parliament has become little more than a rubber stamp for decisions made behind closed doors. In addition to their objections to the budget, the EFF has also been outspoken in its criticism of the ANC's handling of the country's economic challenges. Malema has repeatedly pointed to the high levels of unemployment, the persistence of poverty, and the worsening inequality in the country as evidence that the ANC's policies have failed to deliver for the majority of South Africans. This criticism, however, is not just directed at the ANC, it is also aimed at other parties in the opposition, particularly the DA and EFF+, whom Malema argues are complicit in maintaining the status quo. For Malema and the EFF, the collapse of the Government of National Unity represents a victory in their broader struggle for economic justice. Malema has expressed happiness over the collapse of the GNU, suggesting that it has exposed the flaws of the current political arrangement. He views the failure of the GNU as proof that a truly inclusive government, one that prioritizes the interests of the country's poor and marginalized, is not achievable when parties like the DA and EFF+ are involved. Looking ahead, it is clear that South Africa's political landscape is undergoing a transformation. With the ANC's dominance no longer assured, coalitions will likely play an increasingly important role in shaping the country's future. The question, however, is whether the political divide between parties like the EFF, DA, and EFF+ will allow for the kind of cooperation needed to address the country's pressing issues. Malema's refusal to work with these two parties suggests that he believes their influence would be a hindrance to the kind of radical change he envisions for South Africa's future. In conclusion, the political battle in South Africa is intensifying, with Julius Malema and the EFF positioning themselves as key players in the struggle for economic justice and transformation. Malema's rejection of the DA and EFF+ as potential coalition partners underscores the deep divisions within the country's political system and highlights the challenges of forging a government that can address the needs of all South Africans. As the 2024 elections draw closer, it remains to be seen how these political dynamics will play out and whether Malema's vision of a radically transformed South Africa will come to fruition. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth political analysis. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of Julius Malema's stance on the DA and EFF+? How do you see the future of South Africa's politics? Let us know.